Welcome to this week's guest interview on the Accounting Influencers podcast. I'm thrilled to have with me today Hugh Walker from Practice Ignition. Hugh, good day to you.
G'day, Rob. How's it going?
We're doing great. Hugh, you're not from this part of the world. Where's home for you originally?
I guess I gave it away with the very start of my, talk on the pod, right? So I'm actually English born near Reading, but grew up most of my life over in Sydney, where PI, I guess, was founded. I moved back over here. The advantage of a global role is that I can kind of do it from anywhere. So I moved over here November 2019 because I have just, impeccable timing. Got here, had a beautiful grey English winter, and then along came this little cheeky virus and spent about 2 years working out of my flat.
Yeah, the joys. Hugh, I'm just getting a little bit of you tapping on your keyboard. I don't know if you're looking at notes that you've made, so are you okay with that? We'll edit that little bit of me.
Yeah, I will keep it out.
Sure. And Hugh, for the benefit of people that haven't come across you, just tell us a bit about your background and your areas of expertise.
Yeah, beautiful. So I actually started in this space coming up on 8 years ago now, I think. I actually got my start at Receipt Bank, so Dext now, over in Sydney, and worked my way through. I think I had 5 different roles there in about 3.5, 4 years.
Wow.
Before jumping across to PI to sort of take over the customer success, I suppose, channel for us, and sort of heading that up globally. And I suppose really, the focus for me is customer success, and I think a lot of that is change management. But underlying everything, I'm a genuine true believer in the sort of the ethos, if you will, that if we can make our customers more successful, if we can make the small businesses that we're working with more successful as businesses, that's really my goal. I'm here to help our customers be more successful. I'm pretty bullish that PI is a big part of that, but that's kind of the core of what I do and why I do it.
Yes. And people talk about customer success a lot, customer experience, client experience. These are very much buzzwords. They fit a lot into values and websites and vision statements, but it's fair to say a lot of fintechs and vendors and even accounting firms, they play at it. So just take that as a concept. What do you see companies getting wrong with customer experience and customer success, Hugh?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of customer success can just be a buzzword. I'm going to sound possibly like a Silicon Valley reject here. It does seem like it's a term that came out of Silicon Valley, where they just kind of took the account manager role of, upsell to existing customers, grow use of existing customers, and then slapping on an element of what we would call internally in tech an NPS, so like a customer satisfaction. So
a net promoter score for those that don't know NPS. Yeah,
exactly. So it's essentially the sort of the buzzword side of it is very much just how do we upsell, how do we grow our customers, get more money out of them, and also keep them happy. And that's, I think, why there can be that degree of it always seems kind of a buzzword fad sort of thing. But there's definitely a subset of it where that belief, and I think this is much more of a startup tech side, where the genuine belief is more, if we make our customers successful, then inherently as successful businesses, they will grow. And inherently, as successful businesses that are getting success as a result of our platform, they'll continue using the platform.
Yeah.
And that's much more, I think, sustainable, much more organic, and a much better experience for honestly both sides, because the customer's obviously happy and successful, and it's much more enjoyable to work with customers and actually grow them and help them succeed, and seeing and sharing those wins with them.
That makes good sense. And for people that are new to the customer journey, do you see it as customer service, then customer experience, then customer success? Is it a continuum or a line or some kind of circle? How do you view it as a model?
I think there's definitely phases of customer journey, right?
Okay.
Obviously, the customer journey has to start with them becoming a customer.
Right.
So you
that
always
kind
have
of onboarding.
Yeah, exactly. But then really, customer success, I think, is more of a mindset. Like customer success done right, I think, is more of a mindset or an ethos around from the very start of that journey.
Right.
The goal should be empower the customer, make them successful. And that just bleeds into all the different kind of phases, into the onboarding, into the continual, working with them in the first 3 weeks, 3 months, 1 year, and then onwards. And they're obviously different phases where you might have different kind of goals, different outcomes you're looking to help the customer achieve and work with them on. But underlying that all should be, is this in the best interest of the customer, and how do I make them more successful?
And
I'm hesitant there because I think it's an easy trap to fall in to say, how do I make the customer happy?
Right.
But a happy customer isn't necessarily going to be a successful one, because it's all, like, the easiest, the line of least resistance, the line of happiness is often just to continue doing things as you are, because change can be scary and change can be hard. But I think to be successful, you've kind of got to make those jumps now and then.
Yeah, that's a very good distinction. And you're presumably crunching a lot of data there at Practice Ignition. You know what the metrics are for customer success. You know all the touch points. What can you tell us about the data you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I have currently in my browser 9 different tabs with Google Sheets open in.
Wow.
With all the different sort of data stuff that I'm working on.
You're just geeking out on that, Hugh, aren't you?
I am probably the biggest sort of spreadsheet nerd in PI, which is maybe saying something.
Right.
But yeah, like, there's so many different facets of it, right? You can, especially, like, a lot of it comes down to usage. So are they using the different, elements of your product? A lot of it comes down to not just sort of are they, but how well are they doing it? How regularly are they doing it? A lot of different touch points. And I think it's one of those things where you never have a complete picture. You're just always iterating and improving. And it's something I've spoken about in the past in recordings and conversation calls around sort of processes, developing a better process. And it's always just kind of start broad. We're going to help them do, here's the one main goal. And then once you've kind of nailed that, break it down and just keep breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces, which just makes it more sophisticated and brings in more elements, which allows you to take in the edge cases and achieve that more overarching success piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's just pan out for a moment and talk about COVID. It's obviously had an impact all over the world in the accounting profession and in the fintechs and software vendors that serve them. So what do you feel have been some of the major effects of COVID?
Well, I mean, everybody now is probably pretty good with Zoom.
Right.
I think
other platforms are available, but yes.
Yes, absolutely. Zoom and its equivalents. And I think there's always, like, as long as I've been in the space, so 8 years, way longer than that, been this kind of conversation around the move to tech and the adoption of tech. And I mean, COVID has inherently accelerated that.
This is the digitisation movement, isn't it?
Exactly, right? Like, stuff like client meetings, face-to-face, even, I suppose, from a more practice ignition minded sort of perspective, signing a contract, signing an engagement letter, you're no longer going to print it out and deliver it to them. You're no longer, like, people might not be in the office and would have access to a printer to print out an emailed PDF to sign. So there's definitely been a growth in that sort of acceptance of the digitisation there.
Yeah, the accounting processes have changed as a result, haven't they?
Massively. You've got to, right? Especially working from home, where you might not have access to a server with a desktop product. The cloud is really showing its huge advantages. I am interested to see how it changes post-COVID, or as COVID kind of, not necessarily saying there'll be a post-COVID, but as we, maybe it normalizes or it kind of dies down to a degree. I'm not going to name names. I was at a conference last year where there was a panel about sort of the future of working in a sort of post-COVID or living with COVID world. And the very first question the panelist, one of the audience asked was, I want my junior staff to get back into the office 5 days a week. How do I make that? But they don't want to do that. They want to work remotely and they're leaving because I'm trying to force them into the office every day. How do I get them back into the office every day?
Wow. And
I thought that was quite indicative of a certain mindset. And interesting to see what sort of impact, not necessarily impact, but like whether this maintains and whether this sustains this kind of working from home, working remotely, cloud uptake piece, or whether people do naturally kind of revert back. Because there's massive benefits either way, right? And it's kind of finding that kind of middle ground that works to enable us all to work most effectively and get the face time.
There are so many arguments on each side of the remote working argument, and social health and mental well-being is on one side for sure, and not having that commute, but also the camaraderie of the office, building culture. There's a lot to consider, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be interesting to sort of see the different ways different companies approach it and what works and what doesn't. I think I'm very happy with how PI is approaching it. And I think we've gone for a sort of a model where people can kind of select which is going to work for them with certain guidelines and boundaries. Personally, I'm going to be working out of the office probably 2-3 days a week, which is great. Allows the FaceTime, allows the kind of the meetings, and the conversations, the camaraderie, but means there'll be a couple of days where I can just be at home on my computer and just smash some work out for a day.
There's some talk about the vendor agenda, Hugh, and to what degree software fintech vendors are pushing their products and platforms onto accountants that are perhaps not as discerning as they could be in making good decisions. But regardless of the technology, one of the biggest challenges for professional firms is implementation of software. How critical is that to what you're doing at Practignition?
It's massive. If we look at sort of customer success, customer retention, all of that, the first, like the start of the journey is the most crucial part, right? It's when people are most engaged, and I think the biggest roadblock to change, the biggest roadblock to successfully implementing change isn't like, typically a project doesn't come to a screaming halt and just collapse at a certain moment. The projects that fail, they typically fail because they just kind of run out of steam and just peter out. And you forget a meeting, you forget 2 meetings, suddenly nothing's been done for a month or two, and it's like, well, I guess this project is now dead.
Right.
Like, that's typically how we see how projects and change management initiatives tend to die. And yeah, I think momentum and engagement early on is absolutely critical.
So with implementation, execution, using the software, you need champions, you need someone pushing the agenda, keeping the momentum going, keeping it front of mind, and obviously making the business case for busy accountants to get on with it and do it.
Yeah, I think there's a number of different sort of key facets to effectively manage change.
Right.
I mean, this is a conversation I'm having with with my team, particularly around the world, with seasonality as it is for different markets, kind of constantly. But I think one of the big things is that people are always waiting for the perfect time. There's always like, oh, if we don't do this now, it might be a better time in the future. There is, I mean, I've been through enough calendar years and financial years to see that there's never a perfect time. There's never going to be a moment where the stars align. And if it is, it's probably gonna be like, great, I can take a week off and go play golf or go sit in the sun somewhere. It's not going to be great. Now I can implement this piece of software, right? So I think it's understanding there's never going to be a perfect time is a crucial part of it. But then there's so many different elements, right? One of the big things we see often is a decision maker will be like, boom, we're going to implement this. This is now the new thing.
Right.
And then just being like, all right, team, go, this is happening. Let's do it.
You go and do it.
Yeah. But I think there really needs to be more. I don't mean to be critical to people, but I think a degree of leadership around like, hey, this is what we're doing, but then you need to give them the context. You can't just be like, this is happening, take it and deal with it. It's this is happening. Here's why it's happening. Here's the problem we're looking to solve. This is happening and here's the why, right?
Yeah, here's why we've chosen this particular piece of software, for instance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the benefits you're going to get out of it. And get them, like, the team needs to be bought in or it's going to crash and burn, right? And I think they need to be supported and empowered. You need to have someone, maybe it is a decision maker, maybe they get to delegate, and another member of the team gets an opportunity to kind of showcase a bit more of their talents. But they need to be supported and along the way. And I think they also need to be properly backed up, right? If you're going to delegate to somebody, you need to basically empower them to be like, go away and do this. If I need to be involved in decisions, let me know, but also like hold me accountable. And if there's parts where I need to be part of these conversations, bring me in. Because too often we have these conversations and someone's like, oh, I was asked to implement this. I don't really know why, don't really know what it is. And every time I need to make a decision, I need to go away and chase my manager for a week before I can make a decision. And you are invariably like, well, this is just going to be a struggle for everybody.
Got it. And you talk to a lot of accountants, Hugh. I'm sure you're getting messages of overwhelm, anxiety, overload. You must try and help them wherever possible to automate their admin and and focus on what really matters. Talk to us about some of those conversations.
Well, I mean, we're recording this very late January, so I think now is the peak time, right? For
Certainly in the UK, for sure, in
yeah.
tax season, but all over the world, they have the seasons. You mentioned
And
seasonality.
seasonality in this
Yeah.
industry particularly is brutal with sort of with all the various tax seasons for financial year ends.
But it is, how can I get time back? How can I automate some of the
Yeah.
what's the word? The menial tasks.
Yeah.
Forgot the word there. So you must help them with that and have conversations around productivity.
Hugely. And I mean, like, not like admin tasks tend to be great for automation, I think, because of kind of two big facets. One is typically admin, like any sort of admin task is something that's repeatable, and it's typically going to be the same every time, right? It's going to be complete this form, create this client in this software, change this setting, like send an invoice, whatever it may be. So it's going to be fairly uniform and repeatable, which is always something that you can easily automate. And the other big thing is no one actually likes doing admin typically, or it's not someone's gonna be like, oh great, I get to spend all day, you know, looking envelopes and typing out writing addresses on them or something. So it tends to be something that people aren't worried about, sad to automate. It's something that people are like, yes, I don't have to do this anymore. This can be taken care of automatically. And it's something that and typically can easily be via some sort of automated process. And there's so many, like a lot of the different tools in the industry, practice ignition being obviously one of them, but I'm not really here to sort of plug that too much, are there to automate different elements of this. And then there's other tools that can do heaps more. Rob, you may be aware, of some of the listeners may be aware of a tool called Zapier. Zapier is essentially like an admin automation tool that kind of automates all of the admin that sits between different products.
Yes.
So the super basic example might be when you get a new client to sign up, they sign up, you can use Zapier to trigger an email that goes out automatically to them with sort of like a welcome pack with any documentation you might want, any forms you need them to complete to get their information. And it's just, you know, that it might be a 1, 2, 3 minute email for a member of staff to send out, but it means that staff member has to be told to send it out, remember to send it out, take the time to send it out, and just be like, oh, I guess I have to send that email now. And if it's a 2, 3 minute task, it probably even becomes more than that with the difference of people being like, hey, I've just signed this client. Can you send this email? That person has to do it. Think about it, find the template, send it. But if you're doing that, let's generously say 2 minutes for one client, and you've got 100 clients, that's 200 minutes saved. And like that's over 3 hours for, you know, that you can just have back.
And when you save accountants time with your practitioner software, what do they spend that time on, Hugh? What really matters?
I would like to think, given how overworked so many of the firms that I work with are, I'd like to think at least some of them are using that time to maybe see the kids or have a beer or a glass of wine.
Recharge the batteries, huh?
Yeah, exactly. My suspicion is it's probably more along the lines of focusing on client work. Like if you're not going to do it for yourself, I would always encourage you to be trying to do more sort of as business growth, right? And using that time, getting that time back to either find more ways to save even more time, to automate even more, or to be finding more ways to grow the business and make your business really successful.
Yes, that does make sense. One of the problems that accountants always struggle with is pricing, positioning, which leads to scope creep and getting paid on time every time. Any thoughts or tips on that, Hugh?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that I think is engagement letter focused. Really, the scope has to be so clearly defined in your engagement letter that you want to have something you can always refer back to, right? And just be like, you asked, we agreed you were going to pay us this much to do X, Y, and Z. You're now asking me to do W. It's clearly defined that we aren't going to do that, so I'm not going to do that, or I can do that for an additional fee and you know, we can then send you an updated proposal, updated letter of engagement to get that done. One of the pitfalls, I'm not sure when this has started, but one of the pitfalls I definitely run into is working with firms and they come to us and be like, oh, our letter of engagement will say instead, oh, like these are the things we're not going to, then we'll define we won't do, you know, A, B, C for you. And I think this is very much like a personality type thing, but I've worked with a couple of different firms, quite often sole traders who are kind of getting their feet and kind of learning and becoming more confident in their abilities and in what they do and don't offer. I distinctly remember helping one particularly back in Australia, and she had one of her clients who had her buying things for them on eBay and answering emails for them, because in her letter of engagement she had a list of all of the things she wouldn't do, and she had specifically stated, I will not do your eBay shopping for you and I will not reply to your emails. And they're like, well, can you do this for me? And she had looked back and be like, I guess I can. I guess I am going to do that for them then. So I think being very clear and essentially saying in your terms, the only pieces of work I'm going to do for you are these ones explicitly stated. And then, having that to refer back to and keeping that sort of front of mind. So then when those conversations come up and the scope creep comes up, you can refer back to it and have that conversation about, well, we didn't agree to that, but we can definitely do it for, an additional X amount of money.
Yes.
And then I think the other kind of key piece with that, scope creep doesn't always happen as a suddenly the client will be like, hey, can you also do this? It's just these kind of like, you find yourself over a year, over 2-3 years, gradually doing more and more for them, because it's kind of comes naturally to you to do as well. And that's, I think, the other side of things. And that's really just about like getting into a habit of probably every year, maybe every 2 years, reevaluating, reviewing all of your engagement letters, reviewing all of your client relationships, and what did we initially say we were going to do for them, and for how much, and are we still doing that? What else are we now currently doing for them? Do we need to, update this beyond just the standard price increases every year or two that should happen as well?
Yeah, this is excellent, Hugh. And let's ask briefly about practice ignition. If accounting practitioners listening, and that's the majority of our audience all over the world with our 20,000 listeners, if they're not sure what practice ignition is, how would you put it in a nutshell, what you guys do?
I would say Practice Ignition is a client engagement and commerce platform, primarily focused on this sort of accounting, bookkeeping space. It's really around helping them win more clients, provide a better sort of upfront client experience, clear engagement letters, very defined services, templates to help them save a lot of time and automate a lot of the admin around creating that. And off the back of that, automating all of the payables piece. So the invoice creation, the payment collection, basically taking away all of the kind of the accounts receivable, debtor days sort of piece.
And how are you better and different from any of your competitors out there that are in this space?
I'm not sure I really like sort of talking about a sort of a feature conversation with competitors, right. Because I don't want to negatively talk about anybody else or talk down about anyone else. I don't think there's anybody out there that does everything that Practice Ignition does.
Okay.
We do the full engagement letter piece, a lot of the sort of workflow deployment piece, and also the payment collection all in one platform.
And the benefit of that is?
I mean, it's all tied together. It means you don't have to update 2 systems. It means you don't have to pay for 2 systems. We have, I think 87% of our customers have been able to cancel other subscriptions as a result, and cut down the number of different subscriptions they have and different tools they're using. But beyond that, if we come back to that scope creep piece, let's say you've engaged for a client for an engagement letter, and then, a year later, 2 years later, you need to review. At that time, you then need to remember, if you have separate systems for the bill, the engagement letter, for the management of the client, if those are all completely disparate, you have to remember to update all of those every time you're going through and updating the engagement letter, rather than having that automatically done. And again, huge amount of time and effort and admin just saved automatically. Plus, obviously, the human error can slip through, and you might have a client sign a new engagement letter and forget, an admin person kind of forgets to add them and update their payment details and update the amount they're getting paid, or we're collecting payments from them.
Yes, and people listening can go to the Practice Ignition website, take a look. If they want to have a conversation with you, Hugh, what's a good way for them to reach out to you?
Me personally, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter. LinkedIn, Hugh Walker. Twitter, I think it's Hugh_S_Walker, because there's apparently a lot of Hugh Walkers out there. But I mean, if you reach out through any of the sort of the Practice Ignition website, channels, social medias, I'm always very happy to have conversations with customers. I do what I do genuinely because I love helping our customers and love having those kind of conversations with them.
Yes.
So very, very open to any of those conversations if people want to reach out.
And Practice Admission have made this offer available to our listeners using the code AIR21 to receive a 25% off all plans for your first 6 months. You just need to go to info.ignitionapp.com/AIP for the Accounting Influencers podcast. That's info.ignitionapp.com/AIP. So that's a lovely offer. And we'll ask you one last question just to finish, Hugh. Talk to us about the importance of first impressions. We know that accounting clients are switching firms, promises haven't been fulfilled, the customer experience hasn't been right, their accountants have not been proactive enough, or maybe haven't got the expertise to deal with the complex COVID world that we're in right now. So first impressions count. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing is the industry is definitely getting more and more digital, more and more tech focused. And a lot of the clients in the other spaces out there are doing exactly the same, right? And looking to work with firms who give that impression and speak the language of technology, right? And I think the first impression, like our first impression, Rob, is basically having this kind of conversation, right? But when it's with a client, the first impression they're going to get of you and the first impression they're going to get of your business are typically two different things. Because of the first impression of your business and how you work is going to be more around how you almost the engagement process itself. And I think there's a huge difference in, hey, here's a PDF I need you to run through, print out, sign, scan it, and send it back to me, versus, and then we're going to send you an invoice, versus, hey, here's a digital platform you can go into, review everything in the one place, digitally sign, put in your credit card or your bank details to automate the payments. And it's giving that client, that prospective client, it's giving them the right signals that you are using tech and you understand tech and you're talking their language. And not only that, it's, if they're like a typical small business looking for an accountant is not going to just be like, hey, I'm going to talk to this one accountant and get a quote and see if I like it. They're going to talk to 4, 5, 6 different and compare. And if there's 4 or 5 out there that are sending over these PDF engagements, old slideshow proposals, and then you're sending this beautiful digital platform, it's got payments built in, which is something that these clients are already used to in everything they're doing in their day-to-days. It just really sets an entirely separate first impression and differentiates you from the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you grow your business. That's how you get successful, is you are a step ahead and you're using tech in the right way to give you those advantages.
There it is. You heard it there, you accounting practitioners. Hugh Walker, that's been terrific. Thanks so much for your time and your insights today.
Absolute pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
You've been watching or listening to the Accounting Influencers podcast featuring hosts Rob Brown and Martin Bissett with key interviews, what's working in the accounting profession, and news from the accounting and fintech world that helps you do your jobs better. We go out to 144 countries, over 20,000 unique listeners with 100,000 downloads, and it is accredited for continued professional education and development. Thank you for tuning in.